In this lecture, we are now ready to send the account activation email once the user sign up. So the very first thing that we want to do is to set up our system so that we are actually able to send emails. So let's come over to the env file. Then let's come under mail settings. So you can see that the default mail driver here is set to Megon. The other alternative is SMTP. So we can find all of this information in the documentation. So let's get to the documentation and then sending mail. So you can see that the first thing that we need to do if we want to use SMTP is to set up mail driver to be equal to SMTP and then provide our SMTP credentials, which is what we are going to do now. But if you are using Megon, I always use Megon for my production environment, but since we are developing now, you may choose to use Gmail as your SMTP or any other SMTP. But for the purpose of this series, we are going to be using Mailtrap. So mailtrap.io. So the reason why we are going to use this is just to remove all of the complexity of people not being able to actually send email. So we're going to use Mailtrap to send the email, trap the email inside of the Mailtrap server, and then do all what we need to do. But in the production environment, you need to consider using something like Megon or a valid SMTP provider. So I'm going to click on mailtrap.io. If you don't yet have an account, you need to actually sign up for an account. So I'm going to click on login because I have an account. Then I'm going to log in with my GitHub credentials. So I'm going to put my GitHub username, and right here it brings us to this dashboard. You can see that I'm using a very basic account. So the first thing that I want to do here is to create a mailbox, and I think for the free account it's only allow me to create one mailbox. So I'm going to call this link share. So I think if you are just registering, you probably have a mailbox here which is going to be called demo mailbox or something. I deleted that a while ago. So this is my mailbox link share. It means that when I send any email from my application, they are going to be sent to this mailbox. So let's come here to this gear icon, click on it, and here we can see the SMTP credentials. So what I'm going to do is just copy this. So I'm going to copy all of this, come inside of my env, and then I'm just going to update things. So because Legato is already configured to make it very easy for you to send email, you can just update the value here and then the framework takes care of the rest for you. So we can say smtp.mailtrap.io. So we can use any of the ports here. And then my username is this. And then my password is this. Okay, so I've updated my credentials and then I've also set my driver to be equal to SMTP. So very important, unless otherwise you're using Megon, so you should update your driver to be equal to SMTP. The next thing that we now want to do is come inside of Alt Controller, and then here we can say this, send mail. And then we probably want to pass it some parameters, some params. Few things that you may want to do here is to wrap this in a try-catch block so that it doesn't break your application, and then you can do whatever you want to do with the exception message if something goes wrong. So we've not created this function yet. We're going to write everything here first and then later move it to inside of the function. So the first thing we want to do is to create the variable called params and then specify all of the details for the emails that we want to send. If we go back again to the documentation, you can see here that to send email, we simply need to do the following. Specify the person that we're sending the email to, who is sending the email, the subject, and then the body. So this is just basic sending of email. If we want to use a template, we need to actually create a template inside of resources, views, and then pass in a views element inside of param array. So this is essentially what we are going to be doing. So we could just grab this and then paste it here. So who are we sending the email to? So that will be user email. So the email of the user, and then here username. user, username. From, we can just say no reply at linkshare.com. And then here, we can just say config app_name. And then for the subject, we want to say account activation. And then for the body, we want to pass an array just as it is shown here. So the first key we want will be the code. That will be the user activation code. And then name will be the username. And then the view will be email activation.php. So that is the activation view that we created here, activation.php. Then we can pass in the param to this function, or we can just simply call the mail send function here. So we can just say mail send and then pass it params. And then we can now return view auth/register. Then we can pass in data. So we can pass in an array called the success. Set this to account created successfully. Please verify your email. So that will be all we need to do to complete the registration process. We are now ready to begin testing this out in the next video to see if everything works as intended.